Greetings, everyone. P. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Live Album Love. Of course, in the co-captain's chair, he's got his mug, he's got his coffee, he's ready to go. Mr. Rick Labonte, what's going on, my friend?
Good morning.
Bright and early here today on a
Yes,
Friday, right? And
yes,
what better way to kickstart your day, especially when we're taking the place of the great Mr. Martin Popoff? We're going to talk about live albums because Rick and I can talk about live albums any day of the week. And Friday, I think, is the best day of the week to talk about it because we need something to kickstart our weekend. And live music is all about the weekends, right?
it
So
is. It
we're going to talk
is.
about many of the great live albums from The Who. And Rick and I, there we go. Rick and I have been kind of wanting to do some sort of a theme around live albums, but specifically about the granddaddy of all live festivals in Woodstock, right? So, we tackled Jimi Hendrix last month, right? Of course, big headliner from Woodstock. Uh, I'll be the first to tell you that I think one of the greatest performances of the Woodstock Festival in 1969 was from The Who, even though they were all tripping on acid that got kind of slipped in their drinks from Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. They still pulled in
Yes.
a great performance, hot on the heels of the release of Tommy. So we're going to talk about the Who at Woodstock. We're going to talk about the Who at some of these other great venues and legendary shows. And we're going to go through some of the live albums that we've kind of picked up over the years because they've got a lot of them. There's a lot that I don't even have. The Who, if you, I don't know the complete number, Rick. I didn't do the research, but I'm sure if we were to take a look at all of the official live albums released by The Who, it's probably up there in the 20s, I would think.
Well, yeah, I would say I know that
Maybe more.
probably double their discography, that's for
Oh, yeah,
sure.
because they don't have a big discography. That's the crazy thing. They probably have way more live albums than they have studio records. I've
That's
always
true.
it's funny because that's like a topic that doesn't come up often. It's like these
Yes.
legendary bands who don't have a lot of albums, surprisingly, and The Who is one of them. I mean, they were very the recorded history is pretty sparse when you look at it.
But even though we did Jimi Hendrix, just speaking the same thing, right? We were three albums, four albums officially, whatever. But but
He
yeah,
he
and
died, so he had an excuse because he died. But Townsend and company really don't have an excuse because they were a pretty active band for still to this day, I mean, they don't really put out albums that much anymore, but they did not that long ago, and they tour every couple of years, it seems. So it's yeah, I
because they
think
became solo artists after Moon died. They didn't put all their eggs in all the baskets all the years, but they were still known as we got to talk about one of the greatest live bands to watch. I mean, they were a main attraction, and then obviously we know the story. Especially if you check out movies like Kids Are Right, you see that they started off using destroying their instruments after every show because it was something that helped them get the draw. People couldn't believe that this band would do that, but it was more than that. They were more than just losing their temper on stage. They were just a dynamic band that was, everybody's just going all out on their instruments, all out to be the center of the attention, and everybody fighting for that limelight, and each character has a superpower that they bring to the table, and they do it wonderful. And it took them a few years, but by the time we get to these live albums that they started recording them because they are a main attraction, they also have the song to back that up. The
yeah,
songs that are so powerful to watch it being live, especially with songs that were such dynamic. You feel like running when you listen to some of their music. And then there's some songs you just feel like that melancholy music that he presented. Depending on what they're doing, but it's a lot of emotions. And that's what you get in a Who concert. And people love it because it's never dull. That's the thing. The Who is always
yeah.
a sighting to watch.
You hit on some good points here. The four very, very strong characters, right? And let's think in like movie or television terms, right? In movies and in television, you have to have strong, memorable characters that you can connect with. Well, The Who took their brand of music and made it musical theater, but you had four guys, Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, Keith Moon, and John Entwistle. All four of them, like you mentioned, all stars, superstars, superheroes, virtuosos at what they did, and really distinct personalities. And I think that came across on stage. And you're absolutely right. If you go back and there's plenty of footage out there, folks, if you're looking to explore. If you go back and look at some of the really, really early footage of the Who live on stage prior to Pete Townsend smashing guitars and Keith Moon kicking in the drums and uh, Roger Daltrey twirling the thing, right? They were just a straight up rhythm and blues band that just kind of stood there and played. And yeah, that's fine and dandy, but that doesn't really stand out from the pack. It was once they decided to kind of become showmen on stage, which I think, if you read lots of interviews with Pete Townsend, after a while that started to become, and Hendrix said the same thing. After a while, the audiences wanted more of that, and they're like, well, no, we're serious musicians, we're serious artists. We're not here to just destroy guitars and things. But when you set that precedent to bring in audiences, and that's what drew people to the Who right off the bat, was that energy, that element of danger, right? And these
Mhm.
four distinct personalities up there. And I think the Who had a hard time living up to that as the 70s kind of got on and they got older and they wanted to, again, Townsend wants to be known as a serious artist, a serious songwriter, and he is. But I think it was hard for him to escape that rebellious kind of musical genius, kind of dangerous guy on stage. And as they got older, they had to kind of reinvent themselves, which I think they did. But you are absolutely 100% right. As great as some of these albums are, the studio albums, I should say, this band was extra special on stage. And that's why I think they have so many live albums that we look at today as legendary from that time period, specifically like 1970, 1969 to like 72, which I think most would agree with. That's the peak years of the Who, from Tommy through Quadrophenia. But yeah, these are some ferocious live albums we're going to talk about today, especially the early ones. And I guess we should, I don't know, Rick, the earliest one I have is from the Fillmore East,
Me too. Me
and it's
too.
1968 live at the Fillmore.
The only other thing you could get earlier that if you get the Kids Are Right soundtrack, is some live material of earlier
Very
period.
early,
But
yeah.
this is not a complete show. They're missing one tune, but everything else is there. I do have the bootleg version of this where I have the other song, but by the time they prepare this, the integrity of that tape started losing. So we do miss a track on here, the very first track I heard. But anyway, they could live at Fillmore in 1968 and East, and they could quite a package because this would be something that they, always famous for playing all the hits, and you would start hear Summertime Blues and all that. But this too, it is two CDs. It's just one song, My Generation, for 20 what 3 minutes.
33 minutes long. Yeah.
Yeah, 30,
It
sorry, 33, yeah.
could be the longest version of My Generation ever on a live album. It's crazy. But I think there's some really cool stuff on here because this is pre-Tommy. So you get like some early stuff on here. Like you mentioned, Summertime Blues. You got, Tattoos on here, Little Billy, a great version of I Can't Explain. Happy Jack is on here, a really good, a quick one.
Hmm.
And that's, you don't have a lot of live albums with a quick one on it because they kind of, once they did Tommy, they're like, all right, we'll move away from a quick one, which was the first little rock opera
Mini
that they
opera,
did.
yes.
But
And
it's got Come On,
my way,
Everybody,
my
Shake It
way.
All Over, Boris the Spider. I mean, this is a pretty raucous, full of energy live album. I remember when this came out, it's like all of a sudden this was released in, like, what was it, 2018, like to little fanfare. And I was like, holy cow, that's like one of the earliest official ones that they released. Very, very cool. And you can see they still look like, Roger doesn't have the curly hair yet.
Yep.
Pete, they look really, really young, and they are. But yeah,
And
but
he's
it's
blowing
very
it out.
cool.
The year before, they were at the Monterey Pop Festival,
Yeah.
and I have that Monterey Pop Festival where they throw a couple of their tunes. Picture of Lily's on that, so that's kind of nice to have
But
that
why
show.
is it they never released that full set officially? I never understood.
I got a box set, but it was only like a couple CDs, not like a lot. And it never played the whole set. I don't know, maybe probably because they didn't capture it all. I imagine they just remember big tape back then. They were like 20 minutes long or 25 minutes, so it might have been hard. Or, but the big wheel to wheel, there's no excuse for that. So I don't know. I don't know what they used at that time, but it is interesting to bring up. But Monterey Pop Festival will be the first official live recording of the Who
Yeah.
ever to be released at that time. So I had to get it. But this is cool because this is the earliest date to get a complete set almost, and to get this, it's good to add to your collection.
Yeah, it's a good sounding one too. So.
Hmm.
So next up, so they've released it officially. I guess it's official. I have not bought it, but I have like a bootleg of it. So I have the Woodstock set on a bootleg so that's the one got to get.
Yes.
So does that have 8 tracks? How many tracks are on yours?
It's a
Well, I
20.
mean, it's got the Tommy, so I don't know. Mine says 8 tracks, but that's because Tommy is like a million different little ones. But I have,
Yeah,
let's
mine
see
is.
if they match. Heaven and Hell, I Can't Explain, and then all the Tommy stuff, and then Summertime Blues, Shaking All Over in My Generation. Is that pretty similar to the official one?
Yeah, I'd say I got more than that. I got Heaven and Hell, Can't Explain, It's a Boy. Then they do the Tommy all the way through. And then they do Summertime Blues, Shaking All Over My Generation, Encore with Naked Eye.
I need to get that then. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I got this actually when I was in UK. I was there was some CDs available when you're in between the show between Uriah Heep and Vincent Caravan, and I went and browsed and said, "Why do I have this?" I didn't. It jumped out on me, and I looked at the date. It was actually 2018 or something like that. I didn't even know it was out, so I had
Yeah.
to get it.
I could see. I just did a little quick Google search. I see a ton of them available, so I'm going to go pick one up today. But yeah, I personally. So again, I maybe like yourself, Rick. I grew up. My first introduction to the Who was the soundtrack to the film. Kids Are All Right,
Oh,
and I fell in love with the clips from Woodstock and that because I was always interested in Woodstock, the history of because living here where I do, right? And I personally think the Woodstock set is phenomenal. It sounds great. It's bursting with energy, and again, it's from this time period where the band is like high off of Tommy, and they're running with it for a couple of years. And I think like Sparks and See Me, Feel Me, because again, for me, the Woodstock historian, there is nothing more exciting to me than watching footage from Woodstock and seeing them sing See Me, Feel Me with the sun coming up across the
yes.
trees because I've been to the venue a million times and it's gorgeous there. And to see it, and I can only imagine what it would have been like to be there watching the Who playing that song as the sun is starting to rise at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning because they played in the middle of the night, which is crazy. And that to me, that just sends shivers every time I listen to it or I watch the footage. It's pretty cool, you
Well,
know.
that's cool that you mentioned. And to me, the first time I saw The Who was the Woodstock movie with my mom, right? Remember I told you about that? Then
Yeah.
I went to a theater to see The Kids Are Alright. But on the soundtrack of The Kids Are Alright, they do add the 3 songs of the Who concert that we didn't see on the soundtrack, like in the movie, but they played the Sparks, Pinball Wizard, and See Me, Feel Me
Yeah.
in the right in a row. And so it's nice to have this here before we got that. So that was something I always felt, well, if they got this, they must have it all. And I was always
Yeah.
wondering when they're going to show that.
You would think. Yeah, I mean the clips from the Woodstock movie are just absolutely amazing. And I've watched that movie so many times. And every time like the Who comes on and does their thing, I'm like, oh, how awesome is that? Like I said, it's just so cool because you watch the clips and like it's dark when they're first playing, and then all of a sudden they're finishing up and there's the sun coming up behind them. I'm like, ah, that's so awesome. But
And who's
kind of when you think about it, kind of shitty for them because here they played this legendary set in the middle of the night when probably a good chunk of the audience is sound asleep. That kind of sucks, right? They deserve like
yeah,
8, 9 o'clock slot, I think.
not like when you see the Iowa Right show, people are still up and up at
Oh
three,
yeah, yeah,
4 o'clock in the morning. You're a
yeah.
lively crowd. But with the what's interesting about that Woodstock is that he also throw away a Gibson guitar out there. There's somebody out there that has a guitar from that Woodstock show
Just
that
walks
he
up and goes,
threw.
"Bloop."
I mean, Elvis gave scarves and stuff like that. Pete Townsend, he throw a guitar out there. That's funny. So somebody got a nice, some hippie from New York or somebody or that went there got some a nice souvenir for
They've
sure.
got an SG hopefully up on their wall that's from that. Yeah, it's because he already it's funny because I could see it as we're talking about it. Him just bashing it on the ground, and then he lifts it up that final time, and all you hear is that feedback, that like dinosaur roar. He's like, "Boom," and then you hear bang, and then he unplugs it and just goes, "Okay, here you go," and walks off the
Yeah,
stage.
that's my signature. You didn't have to sign it. I damage
That's
it
it.
on the
Yeah, that
floor.
crushed bottom is all you need. But
Yeah,
it's funny because in the Kids Are All Right film, when they're interviewing him and they're talking about Woodstock, he basically says, "I hated the whole experience." Like Townsend was not into these big, gigantic festival crowds and things like that. Plus the fact that they were slipped acid, and I'm sure to him it was a terrible experience. But looking back on it, helped make them superstars.
big time. They made them, if they weren't already a big live attraction because they got on the bill because of that,
Yeah,
um, it just got international. I mean, they went worldwide. It was now not just across the Atlantic. Everybody around the world seen the Woodstock film. It
yeah,
won awards. It got Academy Award, I think it was, for Best Documentary. So it got on everybody's radar at some point in their
yeah.
life.
All right, so probably the granddaddy of all live albums for many people is Live at Leeds, and
I have something before
oh,
that.
you do? Okay, go ahead.
Live Holland in 1969.
Oh,
It's a
wow, I do not have that. Cool.
Yeah, it's a relatively new, 2023, I think it is, and I got this from Ken Golden actually.
Oh,
After
okay.
I want to check it out, and it's got a great set. It's pretty much the what we've seen at Woodstock, almost to the same set list, but they did the entire Tommy. They had Sally Simpson. They did the holiday camp. They did everything. Uncle Ernie, all that stuff, where they kind of did a condensed version verse in some of the shows, but this was the complete show. From him this on, I think they started try to be faithfully playing the entire album.
Yeah.
So, but now go to the next.
Yeah, so Live at Leeds. This it's an interesting history with this album, right?
Yes.
Because of course it's been reissued many times, and I will say it's funny. I've had so many conversations with people about Live at Leeds, and I always thought because I had the original, and the original is short. It's only a portion of this show, right? But nobody really complained. It's like, it's great. It's ferocious. It's heavy. It's loud. It's brash. Whatever. And then you had a reissue where they added more to it, and then eventually, all these years later, you get the deluxe edition, which Rick and I both have, and this has the full show. So this was February 14th at Leeds University, and I tell you, Rick, after hearing the entire show, I could never go back to listening to that single album version again because it's just like it doesn't paint the whole picture.
No, I know, and especially what was interesting because I got Live at Leeds when I was a kid at the library. It was a cassette, so I wanted to hear it, and I loved it. And I was like, my generation's so creative, and Magic Bus took a whole side of that whole cassette, and the rest of it was the summertime blues and all that, and it's high energy, and
Oh
you
yeah.
love the power of it, but you're missing some of the vocal touch in this live album because when you get into songs like Fortune Teller, Tattoo, and Happy Jack, I mean, there's some good singing. And they did a quick one while away prior doing this major epic opera. And I gotta say, the band sounds so great vocally. Like Roger's like voice is like I don't know. The album wasn't too far away, and it wasn't a distant memory. Man, I think it done better than the what was released on record. And the whole band was so good. I mean, it's Keith Moon finest years is this period on. And so if you didn't know that The Who was such a big, powerful band because they never had the reputation of a heavy metal, but it sounded like heavy metal with some of the presentation of these songs because it's so ferocious and so powerful. And but to have the whole complete thing, it's a wonder why they didn't. It would have been the best, well-known double, triple album ever made because this would have been like they would never have to work again. People would buy this just to listen to this over and over because this was such a great masterpiece live concert. I mean, if we thought the single record was decent, this is actually way better. Usually, when you add more, it you too much
Dilutes.
might be too much, but it's
Right.
not the case in this We actually feel like we've been cheated all these years not having it in it entirely. So, and it is a deluxe edition, and that's what it's called. And it does feel like that when you know the story.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, in this formation, this is one of the great live albums of all time. And I got to tell you, I love the Tommy studio album. Obviously, it's great. That's the source material. But when I want to listen to Tommy, I either put this on or I put Isle of Wight on because it's just as good over the whole Tommy presentation is just as good on that. And how great of a song is Heaven and Hell?
Oh,
Amazing.
it's a
Never on a
great song.
studio album. Never on a studio album.
Yeah, you can get it on what was that called? Something. Shoot, who's it's obviously it says a Who on it, but it says something like leftover tracks and had dogs and had Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, all these singles that was on it. It wasn't odds and sods, but there's an album I got. Who's this? Who is this? Or something like that. And I got a studio version of Heaven and Hell. And then it would take years before you would get it on the box set with 30 years of maximum R&B for a set you can get. But yeah, so I've had to look hard to find that Who Heaven and Hell studio album. And I guess they did release it.
Yeah, I had no idea they even recorded it in the studio, but it's a great song. Of course, written by John Entwistle, so good.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I mean, we talked about it before how all four members just sound amazing on here, but man, Townsend's guitar has just got loads of gain on it, and it's just like just crushingly heavy. And Daltrey sounds like the rock god that he became, and yeah, Moon is spectacular. It's the whole band is on fire here. So this was February 14th, 1970 at
Hmm.
Leeds University. So of course, the next day, what do? They go to Hull University and play the exact same set, which is which is crazy. It's all the same. There's, in fact, the sequencing is exactly the same. Young Man Blues, Substitute, Happy Jack, I'm a Boy. Yeah, there's nothing different at all. And for those who haven't heard the Hull set, I don't know. I'm sure people would say, well, if it's the exact same set the next day, do you really need both? I mean, there are subtle differences. I don't think Hull is quite as ferocious as Leeds, but it's still pretty great, right?
It's consistent. It's consistent. And by the way, that album I've been thinking of called Who's Missing, where you
Who's
can get
missing? Okay. All right.
Who's Missing. It's a compilation album. It's not an official release, but you can get that. But yeah, this is I just think that when you want more of that time period and if you want it, this is when you listen. I wouldn't want to listen to back. Um,
No, no.
it's when you haven't heard it for a while and you want, and I've heard this quite a bit now, and I love it, and I still, it's almost one of those albums that you can add in there that I never get sick of playing. But I grab it out because again, I don't have a lot of time on this record. I might have played this maybe a half a maybe I don't know, almost a dozen times, and so it's still brand new to me to get to hear this version and hear, oh yeah, I love how they did that one. But yeah, there isn't anything different other, but the fact that he had recorded a series of shows during this period. And if you read his book, at one point, one guy was saying, hey, what do you want to do all these tapes? Oh, I think I got what I need. Throw them out. He got rid of a lot of good stuff of that time period. But well, luckily, there's something that that engineer didn't have the heart to throw it out. He knew it was just too good. And that's why we have some of this. Because he didn't listen to Pete
The only
Townsend.
difference is Magic Bus that I just noticed. Magic Bus
Yeah,
is
I was
not
gonna. That's
whether
right.
it was not played or they couldn't fit it, I don't know. But like there are some differences to some of the song lengths. So like at Leeds, Heaven and Hell was over 5 minutes. At Hull, it was 4 minutes. And just some subtle differences here and there where they stretch out a couple of the tunes or
Like
cut
my
back.
generation.
A quick one is like almost a minute longer at Hull, so that's probably why this they
Hmm.
probably extended some of these a little bit. My generation is almost 16 minutes on both of them. Yeah, so that's probably why. But yeah, that's the only difference, really. Pretty cool. All right, let's
Yeah.
as we continue on to 1970. What do
Yes,
you got
sir.
next, Rick? Yeah,
The Tango Word, which is several great recordings you can get in this particular time period. Jethro Tull, Santana have that too,
Chicago.
and Chicago. A bunch of them have performed in there, and it's great that they actually have footage of this stuff as well, folks out there. Now, this is Tanglewood of July 7th of 1970, and it's an FM broadcast. So this was being transmitted all over the radio, and so and what's cool is that Bill Graham is doing the introduction of this period. And if you look at it, this is one of the first time they introduced a song called Water
Waters here,
to
yeah.
the set list, which would be one of the highlights for me when I first got Isle Right. I didn't even know they did that live, and it was great to have. I Don't Even Know Myself was
Yeah.
another song that they did because I believe he used a capo on both of those songs, so he put those two songs together, if I'm correct. And then of course the usual Young Man Blues. Then he had an introduction, talked about Tommy, and then the whole Tommy. And what they do at the end is My Generation for 12 minutes. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is a great show. Several names are on the bill, so it wasn't just a Who show. So it would be, but they still had two CDs worth of, you know, music here from that performance.
Yeah, this was a venue just outside of Boston in Lenox, Massachusetts, and like you mentioned, say I believe Traffic was on this bill if I remember correctly. I think, but yeah, it's like I said, we have some great recordings from Tanglewood. The Santana and Chicago ones, or the Chicago specifically, is amazing. I think.
It is.
So, and this is quite good as well. And this came out just a couple of years ago. It's good to see this released. Yeah, it's a good one, really good one.
Right on.
Well, I think next in line is the Isle of Wight. Yeah. This is this is to me it deserves to be mentioned up there with the Woodstock and the Leeds shows because this is a great performance. And whether you just want to listen to it or whether you want to watch it, it's thrilling either way. Again, the set list is fairly similar. You get a smattering of their known tracks, and then most, if not all, of Tommy. But you got Naked Eye here at the end, Magic Buses at the end, My Generation, Substitutes here, Twist and Shout. You get like a 50s medley, Summertime Blues.
Mhm.
Amazing Journeys on here. Obviously, you got all the stuff from Tommy. Water's on here as well. It's great. It's
It
really,
is.
really
It's
great.
great.
Um,
It's great.
Probably
It the footage that once you
it's
see
arguably the best
folks.
recorded or videotaped footage, I think, of them.
Yes, it is. Once you see this, I mean, you hear it and you say, "Yeah, that's powerful, it's great." But it takes another level when you watch them, doing it. And you get, well, you mentioned it when we already opened up with that, but everybody at this point is really trying to amplify their personality to be captured in the audience. And so everybody had to obviously Moon flying sticks all over the place. He
Oh
even
yeah.
broke a pedal at one point and he had to just play on one because he had the double bass pedal. And he's like throwing sticks and bouncing and catching the air. They get the Mike Portnoy would learn from later on how to be a showman on drum. Because most drummers, unless you're Buddy Rich and Gene Cooper, you weren't the star of the attention unless they were a drum solo or something like that. But he was like very, very animated. And Roger Daltrey, not playing doing the windmill on the guitar and all that stuff. He has to start swinging the microphone and do all this stuff. He's now performing and running on the spot. He's doing stuff that's so for the, again, we don't have video screens. We don't have a light show. We just have spotlights. So that it became such a visual commodity to see this handsome guy performing, doing his stuff. Then you see this wild man on guitar player doing his antic. The Moon, and you don't know what's going on. John Entro just anchors everything down. Said, I'm not even gonna bother competing, and he does all the work on the fretboard. I mean, he playing lead bass all the time. So that cohesiveness of whatever's going on here is the greatest show on earth at the time. For that 20 minutes or 2 hours or whenever time they got, it could be larger than life. And at this point, to capture that on film, I was surprised they held this long when we started seeing this in the 90s. It's amazing it never came out back then. But this was one of the biggest concerts in Europe. That was the Woodstock. And they had a lot of great people on the bill. And Taste and Jethro Tull and the Doors, the Moody Blues,
Free, yeah,
but
free.
Jimi Hendrix, of course.
Yep.
But I gotta say, like, who was probably one of the best players at that show. I mean, who must have be the one that stole the show to me. From all the footage I saw, I mean, they were just amazing. I love the Jimi Hendrix. I love I've seen the Doors performance. I've seen a lot of it. But I just got to tell you, if they didn't convince the world that we're one of the greatest acts on the planet, this film shows it right on there. And I'm glad we have
Yeah, and we've been lucky because they have released lots of footage and live, audio from the Isle of Wight, from ELP to the Moody Blues. I mean, the Taste performance of Rory
this.
Gallagher is amazing, and I would say probably ranks up there with the Who's performance.
And free.
Free play, Jethro Tull play, the Doors play. The Doors set is really weird because Jim's
Yeah,
full beard and he's just like immobile in the front of the stage, and it's
he's just
very,
hanging
very
there holding
chilling and
up.
bizarre. But and of course, Hendrix's performance, which I think is really great, but a lot of people kind of are down on it because it's towards the end of his life, and you could see there was a lot of issues going on with him, and the sound
Yeah,
wasn't great. But yeah, I mean, Isle of Wight, we've been lucky. We've seen a lot come out of that more so than complete sets and things from the Woodstock, I think.
very
So
true.
yeah. So then Rick, the next one I have is from 76. You got anything else from the early
Oh
70s?
yeah, I got a few of that. First of all, I should mention because these are live recordings a lot of times, the
Oh yeah,
live
that's
BBC
yeah.
and it ends on Relay 1972. So from my generation, all these visits that he went there throughout the 60s, they had done some live tapes. So if you're into hearing how they would have performed Picture of Liddy, for example, or Run, Run, Run live on the spot, they did these things, okay? So the next I have would be 1976. I think you got this one too, right?
Yeah, Swansea. Yep.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, this came out fairly recently, last year, and this was from Wales, June 12th, 1976. So this is right about what Who by Numbers time period,
Mhm.
and of course Swansea by Numbers. So this was that tour. So this is a little different. This is like the Who as the big stadium band,
Mm.
kind of slowing down a little bit. And, Townsend is right in the middle of his kind of mental block period where he's having a hard time coming up with material. Because, I mean, that's the problem with a band like this when you've got one guy who does like 98% of all the songwriting. It's a lot of pressure on him to come up with, classic album after classic album after already doing Tommy and Quadrophenia and Who's Next, right? So, but the Who by Numbers is a good album, very
Yep.
biographical album, I think, lyrically. So here, you have like this is more of like a greatest hits type of set. So you have a couple selections from Tommy, you got Bob O'Reilly. So now we're into Who's Next stuff. So we haven't talked about any of that stuff yet. Surprisingly enough, not a lot of official live albums from the Who's Next period. Isn't that
Well, if
interesting?
you get the Who's Next anniversary, they throw a live at the Vic, and I
Yeah,
bought that
which
to
is really
show.
good.
But
Yeah.
it's not really the complete show, but at least you have, and it's pretty cool. So you can get
Yeah.
that. So it's out there. I forgot one thing. 1975 is live in Texas. It's the
Oh,
DVD.
that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool. And this is great because some of that footage that I saw here was in the Kids Are Right movie. I know that there was a couple of scenes I thought I'd seen it, but I like this one because this is one of those rare versions where you get How Much I Bruised from the Who by Numbers, Dreaming from the Waist. Boris the Spider comes back in the set list after many years. Drown is being performed live now from the quarantine period. So I think it's kind of cool. But the rest, other than that, everything we've heard them do, except they have a song called Roadrunner, and they do that jam with My Generation Blues, which you can
That's
get.
from the movie. Yeah. 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 That's pretty cool. I always, that for me was one of the, well, many highlights from the Kids Are All Right film is see him do Roadrunner because it's so like wild. And then that's when Pete does the duck walk thing, right? When he goes
Yes.
off the stage and
And
the Chuck
if
Berry
I'm
thing.
correct, it's from the Silverdome, Pontiac
I think it's
Silverdome.
from the Silverdome. Yeah.
Right, I
Correct. Yeah.
think, and that would be, but this is like exactly the same set list they did in that period. So my next thing I have in order of sequence, video or CD, would be this one, 1977,
That's good too.
which is basically when they were doing the documentary of the Kids Are Alright movie, and they were also bringing it right, the cameras right to record, Who Are You, which you see him in the studio doing Who Are You in the Kids Are Right movie. But then when they were looking back of all the footage they needed to place a history, they recognized they didn't have a lot of some of the things they needed from the Who's Next album, like Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again. So they put on this. They haven't rehearsed. I mean, Keith Moon is out of shape. He's probably the heaviest he runs, but they do a concert among fans, I believe, my understanding. They invite fans to shoot this video and to ultimately get the awesome version that we see in the Kids Are Right movie, Won't Get Fooled Again, and Baba O'Reilly, where he's using the tambourine in the beginning and then and start jamming. So, but this is like the unreleased concert of that time period where they show the whole stuff, and it had some, some Moon is a little sloppy in some songs that haven't played in a while, but the take that they needed, they got, but it's great to see them, because I only seen those two songs on the movie, and I was like, I wonder what the whole show is like. Well, here it is. It's now available, and they also have a little um, like the live recording of them doing Tommy at the London Coliseum in its entirely, and it was the first time they ever did Tommy like that, straight like that for in London, and so that is a bonus CD where you see it's just one camera. It's not like you multiple camera shots. That's why they never probably release it anything official, but it's a historic document of the Who, and so it's worth getting it.
Yeah, and I think that was the first time they had played together in like what, a year and a half or 2 years, I
That's
think.
exactly it. They were like no rehearsal. They just came there cold and played and tried to. Okay, what else can we do? And what we want to play.
Yeah,
I mean, they had a handful of songs they wanted to deliver, but they were calling them out.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So, next thing I would say, in order of footage, you would get the Kids Are Right movie. You would get all kinds of cool stuff that have never been released in audio, and so you get the soundtrack. Is a great idea. I mean, it's awesome. Some of these versions of these songs are just fabulous. So I would recommend it. I had to get it in my collection. I remember going to see the movie. It was around the time where they used to see the song made the same at the at midnight, and they would play the movie. And we went to see the Who Kids Are Right, and I was like so blown away. I went like bought almost everything Who
It's a
up
great
to that
film.
point,
Yeah.
and my first one was to get this. So, and I went
It
backwards.
was my introduction to the band. That's where I started my Who journey was with that.
I had Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy, the 1974 greatest hit, and that was all I had at that point. And my cousin had, the Tommy album, and he had the Who's Next and a few others. So I got the Kids All Right, and then I went backwards. And by the time the Who Are You came out, I got it brand new. That's how young of a fan. I was 12 years old.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. You have anything in the 80s?
Well, yes, because they're doing the farewell tour in '82, which is funny today looking back. Anytime they rebrand the record, they never call it the farewell tour because they've been working since then. But at the time when they replaced Keith Moon with Kenny Jones, and I do have the live Paul McCartney show, the Cafeteria. What's that show called? Where they had all these guests, and then one of the first footage you ever get is Kenny Jones on that concert, and Queen played that show. Three members of
Oh
Zeppelin.
yeah, the concert for Camp Lucia. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I had that footage, and that was one of the first. That was '79, but that was one of the first footage that you could get of a whole, of a performance of the Who, and they did release that. But when it came to the '82 tour, I got the Sheer one in '82. That was very important. And this came out later, like more recent in the 21st century to get
I was
the
at that
live.
show.
And that's a very special show and a very good one and a different set list than the one the last show was in Toronto. And they made a VHS tape on
VHS.
it, and then it was on like HBO, it was on TV. You could never get it for years, but it was called the Final Tour, and it was the last performance was in Toronto. So I got these. Of course, I had to get it on CD. Could you get the complete stuff? But I got to tell you, Kenny Jones was great. I mean, I know a lot of people always said that, well, he wasn't probably the right fit. he wasn't animated enough to draw attention, but he played time. He had all the fills, but he was a better timekeeper. I mean, he was a really timekeeper.
Well, that's what he was. Yeah,
That's
that's
what he was. But he did do all the muscles and everything that you needed to pull off. And so I enjoyed those shows and I enjoyed those albums today because I played those other Who stuff so much. So it isn't, it's refreshing to hear songs like that you don't think you ever hear live, like Long Live Rock and Love Reign Over Me. By this period, he did a lot of songs that Moon never done with them. And of course, Eminent Fun and It's Hard, a Quiet One, and Sister Disco, Dangerous. I love those songs from those albums, and to have that in the collection is great. But I got to tell you, it sounds great, even better than I remember watching the concert on the VCR. Because I always thought Pete Townshend's guitar isn't as loud as those other recordings. It's so ferocious. But the way that we put out on the live DVD, I mean CD, sorry, it's a little more amped up, and I like that. The guitar got more guts.
I was at the Shea Stadium show, and
Oh wow!
yeah, I went to that concert. It was, he had the Clash played and David Johansen played, and I remember leaving the show that night, and I was really disappointed because I felt like they weren't rocking enough. Like Townsend came out, and he was playing like a white Telecaster, and I was like, Pete Townsend doesn't play Telecasters, and they had all these extra people on stage, and I remember like thinking like there was a lack of muscle to the show, like. But I was very happy with the songs they played because they touched on the entire career. And I will say, in regards to Kenny Jones, I'm of the opinion I don't think he was ever the right drummer for the Who, but I think he was the guy they needed at that time. And I think he was better live than what they let him do on album. I mean, you got to understand those Who albums that they released after Keith died, to me, are kind of safe. They're mellow. They're very different from anything they'd done before. Keith Moon couldn't have played on those albums. His drumming style wouldn't have fit on those songs. I think Kenny Jones was the right guy for where Pete Townsend was in his songwriting period at that time. So not he wouldn't have been a right fit for the Who 10 years before that, for sure. But where the Who was in the early 80s, he was fine. He was fine.
Well, I just thought he was still a exciting player and all that, but like I said, the guitar tone is a lot more lighter, and that is the reality.
He was having issues with the tinnitus at that point. I think was a big issue, and it got worse through the 80s because I think I saw them again later in the decade, and he played an acoustic guitar the whole night, and I was like, what? It's like
Yes,
because he
that's
went through
about
that period,
89.
right? Where
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's like,
But he had the wristband brace on his hand. So
yeah, and it's crazy because like I remember like I saw them in I think the next time I saw them was in 2002. I saw them like 2 weeks after Entwistle died. They booked a show at Madison Square Garden. They decided to go on with the show with the tour. They brought in Pino Palladino, and Pete was on fire that night. His guitar he was playing a Strat, if I remember correctly, and it was loud and distorted. And I was like, that's the Pete Townsend I was looking for on the previous
right,
times I had seen them. And
I
all of a
agree.
sudden he was full of piss and vinegar again. I'm like, all right, now we're talking. So
And I seen that tour too, and Robert Plant was the opening act
yes, yep, yep.
for that one. And you're right. I mean, he was amazing. He brought all the power, and you had Jack Starkey, who is the best fit to replace Keith
Yeah,
Moon of all the drummers.
100%.
I mean, I like Simon Phillips. I thought he did a good job in the Tommy production, all that. But he played him more. He didn't do a lot of some of the faithful Moon fills that I remembered. And it wasn't not complaining because he's an amazing
Oh,
drummer, as you
Simon's
know.
great. Yeah, for
He's
sure.
fantastic. But I thought Jack Starkey did the best to balance the best of Keith and Kenny Jones in the performance. He did it with justice. Like he was like our Bernie Char. He had the best of David Byron, the best of those guys, and he got the best of the both world and delivered the greatest Uriah Heep show. I think Jack Starkey does a great job for that. He was very faithful in that whole Moon idea. Even all the new songs they put recorded after that, he gave that Keith Moon personality, what the Who needed, and what you made it clear that Kenny Jones didn't bring that in those studio albums, and that's why it didn't sound like the old Who,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you look at it, even "Who Are You" sounded like the Who because Keith Moon did play on a few tunes. Couple of songs he didn't play as much, like "Music Must Change" and stuff like that. But on the other stuff, he did rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then they put out a live album much before this stuff, was called The Who Last, kind of a compilation of some of the performances they did. And they threw in songs that we didn't have in a Toronto and New York show. But by the way, New York, they played some songs they didn't play in Toronto. I think it was cool to mention. Man is the Man. I Saw Her Standing There. That was like that, they never did that. Um, I think the rest is done in Toronto. And this one, I think was cool to have Dr. Jimmy. That was cool to see him have this in recording. Um, at the time, this was the only version you heard live version of Long Live Rock, but not no more. And at the time, Twist and Shout being one of the first. That's why I bought it, because something I didn't have, but then they put out stuff since then. I think the next one we should go would be this, the Quadrophenia. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Join Together tour.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
one with Simon Phillips, where they did the whole Tommy and they had special guests from Phil Collins to Patti LaBelle, all kinds of people on that tour. They put out, and with this box DVD set, they put Tommy and Quadrophenia, both live concerts. And what was cool with the guests, like for the Tommy show, they had Phil Collins, Billy Idol, Elton John, Patti LaBelle, and Steve Winwood. And Quadrophenia, they had Billy Idol come out. And so I think I forget maybe it was the Punk and the Godfather or something like that. But anyway, this is a great, show to have at the DVD, the whole the whole performance, and that was a big deal. And I didn't get to see the 1989 tour with the Who. I think I was clashing with another concert that I already bought for, and I was really disappointed. So I had to get the copy, and I kept watching it over and over, hoping it would come back around. So since then, I've seen every show. I saw the Quadrophenia, and I've never missed the Who for a long time, coming all through the years. And that leads me next to this DVD thing. This is called by 1999
Oh, the
called
Vegas job. Yeah.
Live Vegas Job. It was some internet scam to say that we're gonna do this big show on the internet and everybody. And I guess it never happened. And but it would end up all that resources to record it and to transmit it to the world. They end up making a good live concert out of it, and they did that. So that was cool.
Yeah. That's it.
Next in order would be in the year 2000. I have the Who playing at the Royal Albert Hall with special guests, and they had everybody from oh, so you have that?
Yep.
Oh, cool! I didn't even knew they had it on a CD.
Yeah. This came out in like 2003.
Oh, okay.
Definitely.
So yeah, so and then Eddie Vedder is in here, a few guest stars like
Paul
that.
Weller, Brian Adams. Yeah.
Kenny Jones.
Good show from the band. Again, they
Yeah,
got
Brian
stuff
Adams, yeah,
here.
right on. So it was a good show, good performance, but then it's showing you that Pete Townsend is playing with a lot of power here. Like he got what you were talking about. And that made it exciting because lo and behold, I would go see him in Detroit in 2002. And if you go and get a ticket, you can order right on there to get the concert audio of the show you just saw. So this was the show I saw at the Detroit, Michigan, August 23rd, 2002, and you get the performance. The next time I go see them, they offer the same thing, which was 2006, where you can get the DVD of that concert that you just saw. So everybody who watched the screen, what you saw on the screen was here. So pretty cool concept to do that. And you have to order on the webpage. So I did that. What do you got? Anything in the period?
I mean, the next one I have is Hyde Park,
Yeah, I got that too. That's
which is
great.
what was this, 2013 or something like that? A little bit later, maybe
2015.
2015. So, I
June.
mean, here the band obviously a little older, a little more grizzled, right? Entwistle's no longer with us, but it's still pretty damn good. You can see
Yeah.
the guys, you know. Roger's got this kind of like elder statesman look about him now, you know. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, and he's wearing those glasses so you can see,
yep,
but he put it blue so it looked cool. But it was cool about this show is that they brought, I mean, they were doing Kids All Right, but they never did Pictures of Lily, and they did
yeah,
that. And what was good about '89 was that I Can See for Miles, that this is a good version of that in this song.
yeah,
Bargain came back, joined together. They've been doing that since '89. But there was always some show, like in this period, they did The Seeker. So they started doing some songs that you didn't get before. And yeah.
yeah. You
And
got the
then my
kids are all
last,
right here. You better you bet. Squeeze box.
yeah,
All sorts of cool stuff on here.
yeah.
Or me, Eminence Front. You know.
And obviously this must have been the main day, June 26th, but have bonus tracks like they have on it. They must have had a second show. The last thing I have, besides, you get the movies, there's also the Amazing Journey and the Who. This is one of my favorite documentaries of all of them. But because of that last album, Who, right? I mean, you loved that last album. I wanted to get some of those songs done live, and they released Who live at Wembley with the orchestra, and
Oh,
you get the two CD and you get a Blu-ray disc, and so it's a nice little package. See, make sure everybody can see it, and I mean, right off the bat, it opens up with "Who Are You?" Eminent Fun, Imagine a Man, Pinball Wizard, the new song, uh, Hero Ground Zero, Join Together, Substitute, The Seeker, Won't Get Fooled Again, Behind Blue Eyes, Ball and Chain. I like that song, and I
yeah, it's a
wanted
good
to
song. Yeah.
get the latest song because I honestly thought that was the better album than what was it, Wire and Glass?
Endless Wire. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
agree.
like that album way better. And there was some other cool gems in here, but again, with the orchestra, sometimes that can, you know, be too much and soften it. It actually was really exciting, especially in the Barbara Rally and a few other parts. It just all those cool embellishment that they did with those orchestration, it didn't weaken it. It just strengthened some of the parts. It just made more dynamic, if you will, in all these songs. So I enjoyed that because sometimes orchestration doesn't work, and but it did work with the Who.
Cool. So we covered a lot of ground here today.
Yes, we
A
did.
lot of live albums. So for those of you watching, if you only have maybe leads and maybe you got one or two others, obviously there's plenty more that you can kind of sink your teeth into from the Who past or more recent days. And yeah, I think we can all agree that these guys were always great on stage. That's kind of where they excelled. And they still put on a really good show today. I mean, the last time I don't think I've seen them. It's probably been about 10 years. The last time I saw them in Boston. And they were still really, really good. So yeah, and they come around fairly often, and I think they're talking about doing another round. So we'll
It's
see.
amazing, right? But one of the things is that they're always late, like we said of those other festivals, made an impression. And even to when you think about Live Aid, when I saw them in Live Aid in 1985, I stayed up all day watching that whole thing. One of my favorite part was to see the Who and the Queen. Those two, to me, they sold the show.
Yeah,
It was great to see Paul McCartney. That was kind of cool because wow, Paul McCartney going on live. That was a big deal. The Zeppelin reunion that didn't really happen, but the story behind that. But the Who, I was so proud of them. When I was 15, I was like, man, they're showing all the because at the time, Def Leppard is big, all kinds of people are big in 1985, and I'm saying this band is still one of the greatest live band to see. And then this is a powerful performance for
oh
a
yeah,
concert for New York,
yeah,
for what happened with you know, that was a heavy day. And when the Who came and performed, it just lifted the room. And then you see it on film here. You can see the expression, all the firefighters and the police officers that were on ground zero because of the World Trade Center coming down like that, and seeing the Who kind of just lifted them up in a positive way that we won't get fooled again. We're gonna fight back. We're gonna rebuild. We're gonna move on. And that was an impression. And to me, the Who stole the show on that one.
yeah. That was great
And
stuff.
Paul McCartney did too. Wow, Paul McCartney coming there, wrote a song, Freedom for it, and then did I'm Down, but what a lineup of people. But The Who is those kind of bands because it's such a big deal that if they're going to have a big benefit of some kind of, they're going to call out one of the greatest bands in the world. They're going to call The Who to perform.
Yeah,
And that's why
absolutely.
you see this. Why I even bringing it up. The Who made a big impact. And right from the Woodstock, even though they're not hippies, even though there's a peace and love, they're not really hippies, but they were a big milestone of history that is so important to have their presence through all this stuff. And that's why they all got invited all those years to these big events.
Yeah, when you're known as one of the greatest live bands of all time, you will get that invitation each and every time. So,
Right on.
sure. So, yeah, folks watching, let us know what you think of some of these great Who live albums down in the comments below, as well as any you may have that we didn't cover today, because there's bound to be a few of them.
Oh, for
But
sure.
more importantly, if there are any of these that we've hopefully tweaked your interest in, go out and check them out, and I think you'll enjoy them. So, we'll see Rick once again here on Live Album Love coming up real soon. I believe we're going to talk about Santana next. So,
Yes, sir.
cover
Another
more of those.
Woodstock sensation.
That's right.
BC.
More of those great bands who played at Woodstock and continued to release great live albums and thrill us in a live environment for years and years. So, Rick, anything you want to plug before? Got any upcoming shows up by you that you want to plug?
Well, I'm constantly working all the time, every weekend, so it'd be hard to just follow my page, whether it's on Facebook or ricklabonte.com. Come and see my video, stream some of my songs by all means, and pretty soon I'm gonna have some shirts for sale up on my webpage. You can get any of the merch there. But anyway, any support you guys give is great. I appreciate it. I never take it for granted. I know that there's a lot of love out there, and I appreciate that, folks. You've been giving me a lot of encouragement, and I really appreciate it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, we'll see you next time here on Live Album Love. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together,
All
all
the
the damn
day.
time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Stay tuned in just a couple hours. We got Ken Golden and the Professor's Picks. Tomorrow is the UK Connection. And then Sunday, I'll be ranking the albums alongside Anthony Ferraro of the great Steve Hillage. So that's coming up on Sunday. Till
Oh,
then, for Rick Labonte, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. See you soon. Bye bye.
take care. Have a good day.